Gold is great and Piedmont has to wait. You're listening to Kitco Roundtable. I'm your host, Michael McCrae. Kitco correspondent Paul Harris is back. How you doing, Paul?
Happy New Year, Michael. All good, thank you.
And I've been really looking forward to having on this guest. Rodrigo Barbosa heads Aura Minerals. He is a successful CEO outside of mining and provides really interesting insights into the resource sector's peculiarities. Rodrigo, welcome to Kitco.
Thank you very much, Mike, and I'm glad to be here.
Rodrigo, tell us about Aura.
Well, Aura is a company that has gone through a major transformation in the last 6 years. We changed the strategy, we changed the balance sheet, and we changed the team and the culture. With today, we have 3 mines in operation, 2 gold mines, one in Honduras, one in Brazil, 1 copper gold mine in operation in Mexico called Aranzazu. On the top of that, we have then 3 projects to be developed. One of them start production by April, the other 2 we start construction next year. One will enter production 24, the other one enter production 25. About some numbers, we come from 120,000 ounces of production back in 17, close to 250,000 ounces last year. EBITDA from $20 million to over $150 million. We also not only could grow, but we also paid significant dividends to our shareholders during the last 6 years. We paid $85 million of dividends in 2021, over $20 million in 2022, and additional $10 million of buyback shares. Look in the future, Mike, we see Aura developing and delivering value to our shareholders in 3 major fronts. Number 1, deliver the projects that we have in our pipeline, which will provide the growth of 80%. 450,000 ounces will be producing by 24 annualized, and over 450,000 ounces in 25 and 424. The second one is through exploration. Aura has over 650,000 hectares in areas that we will be able to mine and explore around the mines that we are already operating or the ones that we'll be developing during the next 3 years. And Aura has underinvested in those areas. Only now we are increasing our exploration efforts to unlock value through the exploration. And number 3, the third variable, is the multiples. We know very much that companies that produce 200, 300, 400,000 ounces has a multiple around 0.3 times NAV, 0.4 times NAV. Company that goes beyond 500,000 ounces, 600,000 ounces, can reach a multiple of 0.6, 0.7, 0.8 times NAV. So we know very well how to get to 450,000 ounces by 25. We want to go beyond. That's why M&A is also part of our strategy.
Rodrigo, you just missed one other piece of good news for Aura, and I'm just going to get to it talking about macro. Gold moved higher after U.S. employment data for December showed a slight slowdown in hiring. U.S. employment rate dropped 3.5%, beating market consensus calls to 3.7% for December. As of this recording on noon Eastern time Friday, gold was trading at around 1860, a level it hasn't seen since 7 months ago. Why is gold up sharply? Kitco contributor David Erfley writes that gold has historically performed well during periods of severe economic stress, geopolitical risk, and stagflation, all of which the world is expected to experience in 2023, heightening investor uncertainty that will likely keep the gold price elevated. And the great millstone for gold, the US dollar index turned negative on the jobs report. The index quickly leaves behind the earlier uptick of 4 weeks in the high of 105.6, 65 band, and slips back to the sub 105.0 region. Erfley adds that gold equities are historically cheap relative to gold valuations in the mining sector. Last checked, copper was around a 380 level, mostly flat for the week. A barrel of oil is in the mid 70s, and the S&P is up 1.84%. Paul, how about those mining headlines?
Thank you, Michael. Well, a bit of doom and gloom this week in many ways on the news front, but I want to start with something positive. So I'll start with Royal Gold, which acquired 2 portions of a gross smelter return royalty that cover a large area, including the Cortez mine operational area controlled by Nevada Gold Mines, and the entirety of Barrick Gold's 4-mile development project in Nevada for about $204 million US in cash. The deal will see Cortez become one of Royal Gold's top 3 revenue earners. It has already provided the company with total royal revenue of over $400 million over the past 27 years. Now, Fortuna Silver Mines shares slumped 10% yesterday after the company said Mexico's environmental authority, Semarnat, planned to reassess a 12-year extension given to the environmental impact authorization for the company's San Jose mine in Oaxaca, which was awarded in December 2021. Subsequent to that extension, Semarnat suggested it had made a typographical error and that the correct term was 2 years rather than 12 years. Fortuna initiated legal proceedings and received a favorable judgment last year confirming the 12-year extension from the Mexican Federal Administrative Court. Fortuna is quite upset and says it is probably going to take legal action again. A couple of economic studies out this week and damp squibs all round. Northwest Copper announced a preliminary economic assessment on its Quanica Stardust copper project in British Columbia for a 22,000 tonnes per day operation to produce about £90 million per year of copper equivalent at all-in sustaining costs of $2 a pound for about 12 years. The project would yield an after-tax net present value of about 215 million Canadian at a 7% discount rate, giving an internal rate of return of just 12.7%, following an initial capital investment of 568 million Canadian. 6-year payback there. If that was disappointing, take a look at Cisco Development, which published a feasibility study for a two-phase development of its Caribou Gold project, also in British Columbia, to produce an average of more than 160,000 ounces of gold for 12 years. An initial 3-year phase contemplates a 1,500 tonne per day operation to produce 72,000 ounces at an all-in sustaining cost of $1,600 an ounce, following initial capex of 137 million Canadian and pre-permit costs of 65 million Canadian. The second underground phase would boost throughput to about 5,000 tonnes per day in year 4 and increase production to just under 200,000 ounces a year, but with a 451 million Canadian expansion capital cost. The project has an after-tax net present value of 500 million Canadian at a 5% discount rate and an internal rate of return of 20.7% and a 6-year payback. Finally, First Quantum Minerals Cobre Panama copper mine is still producing as contract renewal talks with the government continue, even though the government ordered the company to place the operation on care and maintenance from January the 4th.
Rodrigo, let's bring it back. Could you talk a bit about your biography? Talk about how you found your way to mining.
Yes, Michael, I'm a mechanical engineer that had the first adventures in investment banking, did my master's in California. And then when I went back to Brazil, I was born and raised in Brazil, and I went back by 2002. I worked in several different sectors: energy concessions, road concessions, cement, real estate, the flip-flops, Havaianas. And lastly, before joining Aura, I was leading a turnaround of a distressed asset in the textile, a leading textile denim producer in the world. And through 4 years, we made a significant change in the company to increase production, to reduce costs, better capital allocation. We won the turnaround of the year back in Brazil by Pricewaterhouse and Turnaround Management Association. And when I was finishing my tenure at this company, a new board was coming in with Aura, and they wanted someone that has gone through distressed asset with a different eyes in mining to assume and lead Aura to a new area and the changes that we've done in the last 6 years.
What's unique about running a mining business? How is it particular as opposed to other businesses, Rodrigo?
Mike, that 3 major aspects that I would highlight when I joined the mining and I am learning. So the first is the purpose of mining, right? Mining is the beginning of everything. Everything we know today, everything we use today comes first from mining. Particularly for me, I'm a mechanical engineer that likes to see things transforming. This purpose really caught my attention, that we are enable the humankind to create, innovate, and prosper. Second, is a unique opportunity to generate value, not only to our shareholders, but for the communities and the environments we operate. If you look mining, in most of the cases, we go to a random place, very far from federal governments in developing countries, areas that has a need for infrastructure, education, and everything. And so mining has a unique opportunity to go there and make a very positive impact. And the third is the returns on mining. Mining, you can multiply by many times your investment if you do it right, and if you get some luck, for sure. While other sectors that I worked, we were happy to have 20% return, 25%, 30% return. In mining, you can multiply by many times. As an example, Aura, we come from $20 million back in 17, and today we are close to $500 million US in terms of value. So there's many other companies that is doing the same, and mining does provide this unique opportunity, like the tech companies made in the last 10 years.
You've done turnarounds with other industries before, Rodrigo. I imagine in mining that how would you say managing risks must be quite different than compared to other industries?
Yes, mining, there's a lot of energy that you have to apply on capital allocation. The risk is of you applying wrongly the capital in project that can delay or can overrun, can really harm your returns. So a very careful look to capital allocation in mining is important. It's a capital intensive, longer payback. So you cannot go wrong many times. So you have to invest a lot of time, understand the capital allocation. The second, I would say, is the managerial style. What I learned in the past in the other sectors, the real change in companies or size and bigger size happens when you deliver to the middle managers the opportunity to make the decisions. So pushing down the decisions, mostly the operationals, to the middle managers, people that are on site, is the key for us to unlock value.
Talk about operating in Latin America right now, Rodrigo. What is it like in Brazil?
Brazil, we just had an election for a new president, Lula. Lula has been president in Brazil for 8 years. PT, his party, has been governing the country for the 16 years. The country, if you look in the last 10 years, has gone through significant changes in very important areas, right? What I would highlight then in Brazil, and I will go back to the new president before I finish, it's you have to check skill box before investing in a country, in a different country. So what we do, we look for is a geological potential. Brazil is already a very strong mining producer in the world, although we only know 20 or less % of our potential. The country needs to have a reasonable infrastructure, roads, grids, and water. Brazil has gone through a major investment to develop infrastructure in the last 20 years. It needs to be, for us, it's important to be a democracy with strong institutions. If you see what happened in Brazil since the new constitution, we've been gradually improving the law system, the judiciary, and the executive. So Brazil is getting very strong pillars in terms of institutions. And finally, you need government incentives, you need agility from government and permitting and so on. Brazil, although falls behind in terms of the speed of licensing compared to other countries, we are improving, and new incentives is coming in also for investing. So Brazil checked a lot of the boxes in terms of a country to invest, and as we believe, the institutions are so strong that it should not interfere much if it was one president or the other president. Brazil created, for example, in 2017, a national mining agency, independent from government, that is responsible for oversee the whole sector and regulate. So that creates more stability independent of the president. And Lula is pro-investment, pro-jobs. Mining can create a lot of jobs and create a lot of value for all the stakeholders in Brazil. We might have more strict environmental laws, which we believe it's positive. Licensing in Amazon, licensing indigenous areas will be significantly more difficult. That's why since the beginning of the turnaround also, we believe that we should go and mine in areas that has already been developed, and we will not touch Amazon or indigenous area.
Now, Brazil tragically had some tailing disasters, a couple of years ago. I think that with some of the larger Australian integrated miners out there as well too. Is that something that is really in the past right now? Would you say that Brazil has got confidence just around mining and mining companies?
No, it's improving significantly. Actually, Brazil was already improving significantly in terms of regulation in tailings dam before those problems. All the tailings dam now follows the world standard to be only downstream and not upstream. That was already regulated before the problems Brazil had. And the problems it had came from old tailings dam that should have been better monitored. But with those accidents, the monitoring, the amount of investments, the amount of procedures we implement in Brazil, it's getting better and better. And I would risk myself to say that we are close to the world standards in terms of tailings dam.
I don't think I need to tell you this, Rodrigo, but it's really hot to be a copper company. You're a whole part of the energy transition solution, and governments are really kind of leaning into that story. How are, maybe just talk a little bit about your production profile and how are copper gold companies and gold copper companies telling that story?
Well, it's a privilege nowadays to be in both sides. We have 30% of our revenues come from copper. We have one copper mine in Mexico. They produce copper and gold, but mostly copper, and that brings us 30% of the revenues in copper. We see either the copper market and the gold with a very positive perspective in terms of prices. Copper, it's well known that we will have to increase the production. The demand is going to go from 25 million tons per year to 35 million tons per year in 10 years to attend the electrical vehicle transformation and the whole decarbonization in the world. So at the same time, with the investments we have projected and with the production we have projected, the supply should decrease. So that is a big question, how we will be able to increase supply in copper to attend the decarbonization. And that will come also, that will push the price up. And it's when you have a company that has both copper and gold, and then we decided to have both since the beginning, it's a privilege because when you have two, you can decide what's better. When you have more alternatives to invest, when you have more projects to analyze, the better decision you're going to make. So in terms of capital allocation, it's very a privilege to be in both with a positive perspective in both.
Talk about that capital allocation, Rodrigo, because with the tightening that we've had through the fall, I imagine that M&A acquisitions, there must be some more deals or things must be cheaper.
Yeah, I think it creates an incentive for new M&As, right? If 2 or 3 years ago, there was not plenty of capital, there was some capital for exploration companies to continue exploration or to build the mines. Now this capital has dried out and those companies has not been able to find funds to move forward. And on the other hand, prices it has been increasing. Price is okay for those that produce with a low cost. So you have a company that's generating cash and it's aiming for growth like ourselves. So there will be new opportunities for a combination of companies that's a cash generation company and acquiring company that's seeking for capital in order to pursue its growth.
Lastly, we have our number of the week. Guest goes first. Rodrigo, what's your number?
It's 49.6, as it was mentioned here earlier. The new PMI just released by the United States last month was 56%, expectation at 55%. That is an important sign that inflation might be getting under control. Thank
you. Paul, what's your number?
My number, Michael, is 500,000. Specifically 500,000 meters. That's the number that Newfound Gold has increased its drilling program to at the Queensway project near Gander in Newfoundland, which is a 25% jump from the previous 400,000 meters it had planned. To date, it's completed about 300,019 meters, with some 60,000 meters of drill core still in the assay lab.
My number is a couple. Once again, a couple. A U.S. judge on Thursday said she will rule in the next couple of months about whether former U.S. President Donald Trump erred in 2021 when he approved Lithium America Corporation's plan to build North America's largest lithium mine. There's a lot hinging on the decision since it will set the tone for how accepting the U.S. is to develop mines needed for energy transition and electric vehicles. That's it for us. Rodrigo, milestones over the next 12 months at Aura?
Milestone, it's first the beginning, the start of the operation of Almas, a project that we start building early 2022 and should start production by April 23, just 15 months after the beginning of the construction. Then we have the new feasibility study and start construction of Borborema, a project that we acquired last year, and we should start construction. Then by the end of the year, we will have the start of construction of another project that's called Matupá. So with these three projects, we will get to close to 450,000 ounces when they are completed. On the top of during the year, and by February, the new AIF, all the exploration investment that we are doing, and we will be sharing with the market as long as we move forward with the program.
That's it for us. Follow me at Michael McCrae. That's McCrae with 2 C's. Paul Harris is at Paul Harris Gold. Rodrigo, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, they can follow me in LinkedIn. You can also send me an email, rbarbosa@auraminerals.com or investorsIR@auraminerals.com. And please visit also our website. Plenty of information about us there.
If you like what you hear, tell a friend. Don't forget to subscribe. On behalf of myself, Paul Harris, and Rodrigo, have a pleasant weekend.